In a previous video, I talked about the reasons why Russia was the first major power to collapse in World War I. Among the reasons, corruption, incompetence, and economic weakness were all mentioned. This was something that a subsequent government would have to fix, but the cure would take some time, of course, and time was a luxury that not many could enjoy in those fateful months. By early 1917, the Tsarist regime had been shaken by military failures, food shortages, and the basic inability and unwillingness to modernize. Previous attempts, going back to 1905, had not achieved lasting success, so discontent grew. The low standard of living was nothing new in Russia, but the prospect of a prolonged war led to mass protests. After suffering enormous losses, army morale plummeted, mutinies took place, and Russian soldiers organized friendly meetings with their German and Austro-Hungarian counterparts. When Nicholas II sacked Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich and named himself commander-in-chief, he became directly responsible for the continuation of the war. In March, which was late February in Russia, as the country was still following the old and imprecise Julian calendar, workers of the Putilov mill went on strike in Petrograd, today's St. Petersburg. On the 8th of March, they were joined by those who celebrated International Women's Day, and they also gained the support of most of the factory workers. When rumors about food shortages spread, 90,000 women marched on the streets demanding bread and peace, and for the first time, the replacement of the Tsar himself. Nicholas II was at the front, the local military commander was indecisive, so when smaller army units mutinied and joined the revolutionary movement, control over the capital was lost. The Tsar decreed the dissolution of the Imperial Duma, the parliament, but nobody would listen to him. In Petrograd, progressive members of the Duma formed a provisional committee, relying on local bankers and manufacturers, but at the same time, the socialists established the Petrograd Soviet to represent workers and soldiers. This rival body remained hostile to the forming government. By the 12th of March, several army regiments switched sides, and 40,000 rifles had been distributed among the workers. Government authority in the city collapsed. Not even the trusted Cossack units would suppress the revolt, with many of their own officers being shot. As the revolutionaries controlled most train stations, the Tsar could not return to the city, and in the meantime, the units guarding his family in Tsarskoye Selo abandoned their posts. Fearing for his family's safety, and convinced by former deputies of the Duma and by his own army chief, he signed his abdication on the 15th of March and named his brother as successor, who in turn rejected this once he realized that he would have little support. The Romanov family was then reunited and placed under protective custody in the Alexander Palace. The provisional government was declared on the 16th of March, promising political and civic rights, but it did not address the war or a potential land reform which the masses desired. It had formal authority, but it was only a loose alliance of liberals and socialists who wanted reform but lacked the support of the majority. At first, they were led by Prince Georgy Yevgenyevich Lvov, a liberal aristocrat with no connection to any party. The masses supported the Petrograd Soviet instead, which had actual power, and decided that the unelected government's decrees would only be carried out if they did not go against the wishes of the Soviet. This name should not confuse us. Initially, it was formed democratically, with Menshevik executive chairmen like Nikolai Chekidze and Alexander Kerensky. Being moderate leftists, they promised peace and bread, meeting popular demands. More and more local Soviets were elected, and although each region was different, the period of dual power kicked off. This sharing of power led to a crisis already in April when Lenin returned from Switzerland with German assistance. He immediately tried to take control of the Bolshevik movement, which was a minority group, but his first attempts were not successful. He believed that peace was necessary, even if it meant defeat, as a new Russia would arise from its ashes and become a paradise on earth over time. Kerensky, who was then war minister in the provisional government, strongly supported the launch of a new offensive to finally recover the lost territories and beat the Central Powers. Led by General Brusilov, Russian troops achieved initial success against Austro-Hungarian units, but German divisions soon counterattacked and demolished the attackers. The troops then mutinied and refused to fight any longer. Tensions were mounting back home as well, with 500,000 people, mostly supporters of the Bolsheviks, protesting in Petrograd. However, Lenin refused to see them, and the Bolshevik Party pulled its support, so the crowd remained leaderless. When violence erupted, government troops restored order. Both the provisional government and the Soviet blamed the Bolsheviks, whose leaders were arrested, except for Lenin, who fled to Finland. The July days led to further changes. The provisional government survived, but its head, Lvov, resigned to be replaced with Kerensky himself, who promised the Entente that he would keep Russia in the war. To the people he promised food, land, and jobs, but the last offensive collapsed, more and more soldiers deserted, while most political parties were busy undermining his authority. Nonetheless, he declared freedom of speech, released many political prisoners, and ended capital punishment, which was a touchy subject. In the meantime, more and more political actors turned against the continuation of the war, which seemed to bleed Russia dry. Soon dual power had to end, only one side could win. In early September, Commander-in-Chief of the Army, General Lev Kornilov, marched to Petrograd with his troops to restore order and unify the government. He and his officers wanted the reinstitution of capital punishment and the complete elimination of soldiers' committees that, in their view, were further weakening the army's resolve to fight. Allegedly, Kerensky initially supported this, but then, fearing a right-wing coup, he withdrew his support, then turned to the Soviet for help. Its Menshevik, Bolshevik, and Socialist revolutionary members managed to convince Kornilov's army to stand down, but in doing so, they gained more political power, while Kerensky's situation worsened. The second provisional government collapsed on the 14th of September, so Kerensky founded the third government, the Directorate, by decree. On the same day, Russia was proclaimed a republic, and the State Duma was dissolved, which meant that the monarchy was officially abolished. The coalition government included the Mensheviks, the Progressive Bloc, and the Socialist Revolutionaries, while the Bolsheviks and the left SRs remained in opposition. The former were especially unhappy with the government, going so far as calling for an armed uprising. In late October, the Petrograd Soviet, then led by Leon Trotsky, voted to back such a move, but several weeks passed without any developments. On the 6th of November, late October according to the Julian calendar, the government shut down the city to prevent another revolution, but the next day, the Red Guards occupied key buildings, followed by the Winter Palace, where the Directorate surrendered, except for Kerensky, who had already left. The Petrograd Soviet was in the hands of the Bolsheviks, who now also controlled the government, the local military, and the workers as well. They assembled a second Congress of Soviets, during which they removed all Menshevik and Socialist Revolutionary members to ensure unlimited control. They also terminated the Triple Entente, ending all hostilities with the Central Powers, so peace talks could begin. I will talk about these events in another video, but I want to emphasize that 1917 still offers important lessons. A government that cared more about catering to the West instead of addressing popular topics could not last long. This is something that would be repeated after the fall of the Soviet Union, during a period which I have also detailed in another video.